Hello, Clarke County. How's everybody doing? Good. We're going to have a little audience Q&A and participation, and you seem warmed up, so that's a good start. I want to start somewhere pretty simple, and Joe touched on it. I think there's one word that describes our political system right now: broken. Politicians have figured out that solving the problems that face us is hard. Mental health crisis, water quality crisis, economic crisis. To solve those problems, you got to read stuff, you got to understand things, you got to talk to people who understand things, you got to craft solutions and get everybody around a table and try to get something ironed out that's going to work for everybody. But they also know that you can have a successful political career if you define success as just getting elected, if you just lie about your opponent and you just get everybody convinced that you're the lesser of two evils. There are too many people in this system in both parties who are happy to do that. They just want to throw bombs rather than actually building something. There's an old saying: any old mule can kick a barn down, it takes a carpenter to build one. We need more carpenters right now. And I'm a believer that Iowans understand the brokenness of this system, and they're looking around and they feel it. And so I want to ask you a question. Does anybody think that my description of our political system has been unfair? No. Then why is this not the number one issue that we talk about? We have a problem-solving system. It's called self-governance, constitutional self-governance. And George Washington warned us that he called it factionalism, but that factionalism, partisanship, could overcome those checks and balances, and said that would be a disaster. Here we are. Welcome to 2026, right? Here in the state of Iowa is a very good example of that. We are at the bottom for economic growth. We are at the top for cancer growth. And the folks who are in charge in Des Moines are figuring out, how do we make it harder to stop the state auditor from finding misspent tax money? Right? I'm not here to tell you that the answer is to have 10 years of one-party control from the other party, because the other party's got problems too. But I'm here to tell you that something you already know: power corrupts, and absolute power. And we can say, and in Iowa, it takes 10 years. In fact, I'm here to tell you that I don't think either of these private clubs that run our democracy are particularly good at solving problems. That's in part because we only have two options on our ballot. Anybody ever make it out alive from going into the grocery store and looking at the toothpaste aisle? If you can somehow get out of the toothpaste aisle having made a choice, I'm pretty sure you can handle more than two options on your ballot. And if we had more than two options on our ballot, we would have real accountability over politicians. We could replace lazy politicians with hardworking ones. We could replace corrupt politicians with honest ones. But right now, too many of them just say, well, I'm wearing the right color shirt, or I'm wearing the right color flag for the place that I live, and so I'm just free to do as I want. I've had enough of that, and I think a lot of Iowans have too. Now here's the thing: the only way we fix that is by working together on it. And so I want to take a minute to invite all of you to love your neighbor. Because there's a lot of people in both of these private clubs that want you to hate your neighbor. That way you're easier to control. Fair statement? So, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. If you should raise your hand in order to be honest, I'm going to spoil it for you. It's going to be okay to do so. We're going to clap for you after you raise your hand, all right? Please raise your hand if you're a registered Republican voter here today. Very good. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate you being here. Please raise your hand if you're a registered independent voter here today. I see a hand go halfway up. Okay, very good. There you go. There's no shame in any of this. We love everybody, right? That's the idea. I'm big on fairness, so let's clap for the Democrats too, all right? And just to prove to the people in both of these private clubs who want us to hate each other that we can get along, and to prove it to each other, I want us to take a minute to do something where we cooperate a little bit. I'd like us to sing the first verse of America the Beautiful. It starts, "Oh, beautiful for spacious skies." I will not kick us off. But I know I'm in Clarke County. There's got to be somebody out here with a beautiful voice, or an adequate one if you want to have a more humble framing. See, this is my favorite part, is always there's the pointing. The pointing begins. Seems like our friend in the yellow shirt here. Everybody knows. No pressure. I heard some harmony over here, too. That was good. Very nice. I actually love that. I don't know what you call it, it just sounds good, right? Doesn't that feel better already? Isn't that what we ought to be doing? So why is it that everyone's trying to convince us that a broken clock isn't right twice a day? It is. If you disagree with me on that, let's have a conversation after this is over, okay? I'll explain that one to you. But I think you know it already, so I don't need to. I should introduce myself. My name's Rob Sand, and I'm running for governor of Iowa. Born and raised in northeast Iowa, Decorah, Winneshiek County. So about as far north and east as you can get. The Sand family, my dad's side, we came off the boat from Norway and came to Winneshiek County. Been there ever since. My mom grew up in Cedar Rapids. My wife is Christine. She grew up in Denison area, Crawford County. And our boys are Tate, who is 12, and Axel, who is 9. No diapers, no naps, no teenagers. My life is amazing right now. Why am I doing this? Christine is Danish. Her family, she's the third generation in her family running the family business, so Danish, Norwegian, it's a mixed marriage. And we are very much enjoying raising our boys. When I registered to vote for the first time, I registered as an independent voter. You may have picked up on the idea that I'm not particularly satisfied with either party right now. If that's your opinion of my opinion, you have it right. I then realized that in Iowa, we tell independent voters that they're less equal than the rest of us. They're literally not allowed to participate in the primary elections. That's un-American. It's un-American. We tell people in June, sorry, your voice isn't welcome here, but hey, July 4th, we'll celebrate Independence Day, all right? How much do we mean it, really, when we are being that hypocritical about it? And so I wanted to enfranchise myself, so I registered as a Democrat so I could vote in primaries. I picked the Democratic Party mostly because of my faith. I think that Jesus is for the little guy, and I think the Democratic Party at its best is the party for the little guy. I also believe the Democratic Party wants us to have clean water and is focused on that and abundant public land, and I like to fish and to hunt, and so I'm for those things too. And as my Uncle Dan, or no, it was Uncle Doug, as my Uncle Doug likes to say, I'm tighter than 3 tight things. So when I saw Bill Clinton balance the budget and use the surplus to pay down the debt, I thought, good. Now that said, just because I registered as a Democrat didn't mean I left my independent mind behind. I do think for myself. I have said things in the course of this campaign that some people in my party disagree with. Okay, we disagree. That's fine. I don't know who said it, but if you agree with me on 7 out of 12 issues, vote for me. If you agree with me on 12 out of 12 issues, see a psychiatrist. I think for myself, and I hope you do too. When I finished my education, I went to work at the Attorney General's office, 7 years as the Chief Public Corruption Prosecutor. In that time, I prosecuted the Iowa Film Office tax credit scandal, the only American prosecution of a Papua New Guinean Ponzi scheme that snared a handful of Iowans for hundreds of thousands of dollars lost, and uncovered the largest lottery rigging scheme in American history. Also prosecuted some violent crime and quite a few sexual predators in that time frame as well. I'm trying to remember. I know I was in court in the Clarke County courthouse. I think I was actually covering a hearing for a coworker, so I didn't have a lot of time in Osceola, but a little bit. Although I got to tell you, the time I've been spending in Osceola recently has been at that Cuban restaurant you guys got now. My boys and I we went 3 times in 2 weekends. Because we came down to Stevens State Forest, did some camping down there 2 weekends in a row when my wife was out of town. When the cat's away, the mice will play. And by the time we came down the 3rd time, they were insistent that we go sit down over there. So I enjoyed a meal. Larry Keller joined us, good friend of mine. Where was I? I got distracted in telling you all the wonderful experiences I've had in Clarke County. We were working in the Attorney General's office all over the state. That was our job. In that work, I worked with the auditor's office because they conduct Iowa's public corruption investigations. And so their investigations would come to my desk for me to figure out who needed to get indicted and what for. I liked the people that I saw working in the state auditor's office, but I also noticed over time that all the people in the state auditor's office thought the same way. You will notice a theme in this speech and a theme in this campaign. When people making the decisions all think the same way, you don't get to the best decision that you could have gotten to. The problem was that all of them were CPAs and accountants, every single one. And that meant that nobody was thinking about making that investigation in a way that was going to work in a courtroom. And occasionally we had some issues related to that. So I also realized the office had a really broad ability to promote government efficiency, and they weren't really doing it. And I said, well, I could do both of those things. So I decided to run. We won. Started a government efficiency program. It's called PI, Public Innovations and Efficiencies. It's a wonderful way for us to help support folks at the local level, schools, counties, and cities with implementing new efficiency practices to save our tax dollars. And the prize that they get is pie. So it's also a wonderful way for me to celebrate with them and eat more dessert. We also found a record amount of misspent money in my first term. We did that by having different people who think differently, thinking together. I put, as a senior leadership team in the auditor's office, a Democrat, an independent, and a Republican. The independent and the Republican had actually made campaign contributions to my opponent in 2018. And I promoted them. Now, people who are really into politics would say, Sand, you're doing it wrong. You're supposed to punish people who oppose you. That's how you get people to fear you. I have 2 things to say to that. Number 1, who is ever going to fear me? Look at this face. Number 2, more seriously, what if I'm not out to make people scared? What if I'm not out to do politics? Here's a phrase. What if I'm trying to do public service? What if my hope is, and I wouldn't label myself this, but what if my hope is that when I'm gone, the handful of folks who remember me might use the word statesman? When was the last time you heard that one? Somebody that's just trying to do right and listen to everybody and knows that every once in a blue moon they might be wrong, and you might want to have somebody around to tell you when you are. And some people are going to be more inclined to tell you when you're wrong than others. Fair? It's sometimes hard for us, isn't it? We know a broken clock is right twice a day, but we don't always want to tell the broken clock when they're right, do we? But that's okay as long as we're listening. Because when we listen to people we disagree with, we come up with better decisions because none of us are perfect. Some of us may be more perfect than others, but none of us are perfect. And so by having people who think differently working together, we found a record amount of misspent money. The legislature and the governor decided that that was a problem. And it wasn't in the sense that they decided to quit misspending the money. They decided it was a problem, so they changed the law to make it harder for us to find misspent money. That's wrong. Plain and simple, stealing is bad. You don't make it harder for the person whose job it is to find out about it to do their job. You should have absolute clarity on this. Every single government watchdog in America that spoke out on this law said it would lead to an increase in waste, fraud, and abuse of your tax dollars. Every single one. They did it anyway. 10 years of one-party control in Iowa has led us to right there. We are at the bottom for economic growth. We are at the top for cancer growth. Our public education system is in the bottom half. And they are spending their time paid for with your tax dollars to figure out how to make it harder to hold them accountable. Now, you'll hear them say scary things like by naming other states and threats that were I elected, things would change. You know what we'd have again if I were elected? Iowa. Because here's the idea. My entire life, when I was growing up in Decorah, we had Tom Harkin and Chuck Grassley, didn't we? And what that meant, we elected someone out of each party because, you know what? If they tried to do anything a little bit too outside of common sense, the other one would cancel them out, wouldn't they? What that meant is that if they wanted to make a difference, if they wanted, through their time in a position of trust and power, to have an argument to make when they hit the pearly gates about what their legacy was, they were going to have to do things that the other could agree on in order to do something positive. Fair? We also, up until the last 10 years, had divided government in Des Moines. I think 30 out of my first 34 years of being alive, divided government. And I heard a Democratic leader, Mike Gronstall, and a Republican leader, Linda Upmeyer, say, we do our best work when we have divided government. That, to me, is our heritage. That is our tradition. That is our culture in Iowa. Iowa is full of people who are able to look at someone that they mostly disagree with, but just kind of keep that conversation going long enough to where you can find a place where you both go, yep, that's true. There's a phrase for this. It's called solving the world's problems. Everybody know what I'm talking about? That's what my Grandpa Bob would do. Sometimes people say, why don't you go by Bob Sand? I say, because that's taken. But Grandpa Bob would be down at Hardee's in Decorah, 6 a.m. every morning. His group of friends didn't all agree on everything, but you'd ask them what you did this morning. They said, well, we're just down drinking coffee, solving the world's problems. But you don't do it with a bunch of people who see the same way on absolutely everything. Because then you know you're going to be a bunch of lemmings running off the cliff. That's what we've been doing, and it makes me upset. It really does. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, when I was growing up, the story that stuck out the most to me from the New Testament was Jesus flipping over the tables of the money changers at the temple. I think I know why, because normally his message was feed the hungry, clothe the naked, heal the sick. Normally, Jesus, super nice guy. But he got angry, didn't he? And when he saw people in a position of trust and power, abusing that trust and power, he flipped their tables over, he sent them packing. There's tables that need flipping in Des Moines, Clarke County. I want your help in doing it in November. We've got some work to do to get there. I know we can do it, 4 months to go. We were here last year, we were listening to everybody across the state. We put together policy proposals that are common sense proposals that the vast majority of Iowa can agree on, because I am planning to be working with a Republican legislature. It is going to be a Republican legislature after November. If that is news to you, good morning, you slept in. It's 2026. But if I'm there and I'm working with them, we're going to have to do stuff that everybody agrees is a good thing to do. And then when that's over, we're all going to agree that we're glad we did it because we all thought it was a good idea. That doesn't sound like anything to me but common sense, and common sense to me sounds a lot like Iowa. The idea here isn't to make Iowa redder or bluer. Red or blue, I just want to remind everybody, are colors, nothing more than colors. When we send our kids to school in the morning, we don't tell them, be blue. We say, be good. Do your best. Be respectful to your teacher. Be kind to your classmates. How have we sunk so low that a color is a substitute for our values? I know we can do better. That's why we like to say on this campaign, we don't want to make Iowa redder or bluer, but better and truer. Happy to take your questions. Thanks for being here. Maddie's got a microphone for whoever's got one. Okay, no one's got one. Say, thanks for coming. I've got one over there in the back. In the back.
Since the state of Iowa tax cuts, how's our bank account now?
Good question. He's asking about how is our bank account, how is our balance sheet. Well, let me ask you a question, guys, because here's basically what we've done. Let's say that you got a job and you go to work your job and you've been working your job for years, and then maybe your well-to-do uncle, we'll call him Uncle Sam, passes away and gives you a whole bunch of money, and it totals maybe what you'd make in 3 or 4 years. Do you quit your job? Would anybody here quit their job? Nobody. It's not far off from what the state of Iowa did. We got a bunch of extra money from Uncle Sam. It was a combination of the Biden and Trump administrations. A lot of it was COVID money. There was the Inflation Reduction Act. There was the American Rescue Plan. And they socked all that away and did a large tax cut for the wealthiest islands. And now here we are. We have a structural imbalance in our state budget that is right now about $1.3 billion every single year. For reference, our annual budget is about $9.5 billion. So we got a budget deficit that is larger than 10%. So that surplus that they built, we are burning off at the rate of about $1 to $1.3 billion every single year. I would call this a fiscal time bomb. There's a fuse. The fuse is the surplus. It's burning off at a rate of $1.3 billion a year, and it's going to hit zero, at which point that bomb's going to explode. Now you can ask folks in Des Moines what's going to happen when it hits zero, and they say, don't worry, we planned for this. And I say, where's the plan? And they say, squirrel. In fact, when I said pretty much just that recently, there was a guy who's recently been in the state legislature who put a post up on social media claiming that that's all politics. And in support for his claim that my claim was politics, he gave everybody the ending balance for the surplus in 2024. Do you notice the problem there? Hey, buddy, how about 2026? What's the ending balance now? Interesting that you chose to provide the number that's 2 years old. What do you suppose that common sense Iowans might realize if you gave them the number from this year instead? I'm not being alarmist. We need to have a plan to address this issue. We truly do. There's a number of things that we can do. Number one, we should quit giving vouchers to the wealthiest families in Iowa who are already going to send their kids to private school anyway. I know we've got our owners here. My advice to anyone who owns a business, not just them, is if you have someone who's willing to do a thing for free and you're paying them to do it, stop. That's what's happening right now. 80% of the money that's going into the vouchers program is going to pay for people who would have had their kids in private school anyway. That's wasting money. They were going to be there anyway. They can afford the payments. That's a bad idea. That would save us hundreds of millions of dollars every single year. In addition to that, this is a little bit more popular with the younger folks than it is with the older, but this is a budget issue. Right now, you can probably sit at the state line and watch the cars drive down into Missouri, right, to go pick up legal cannabis. And then they come back again. Their money leaves, their money doesn't come back. It fuels the coffers of Missouri instead of Iowa. And meanwhile, we're using perfectly good tax money in the state of Iowa to pay for 3 hots and a cot just because somebody smoked pot. It's a dangerous drug. You shouldn't do it, but it's a dangerous drug. You shouldn't do it, but what we're doing right now doesn't make sense. Alcohol also is a dangerous drug. That would add hundreds of millions of dollars. Here's another thing. Data centers in Iowa right now get a tax break. Every piece of equipment that they put in their data center, they don't have to pay taxes on. That's crazy. They should pay taxes just like everybody else. That would give us hundreds of millions more as well. If we did those three things, that would make a huge dent in that budget deficit. Where did Maddie go? There we go. We got one up here.
Okay, and I assume by voucher you mean the ESA funding?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Either way.
Yeah, okay. I personally, I'm concerned about the public school system and what they're teaching. And I like the ESA. And I happen to know there's 41 kids attending a school down here who many could not without that funding. So my question, I'm sorry, devil's advocate here. If you move to limit or eliminate ESA funding, what specific measurable changes will you make to Iowa public schools so that families, especially these families that are using the ESAs, will feel that their children's needs are actually being met?
Good question.
It was a long one, I'm sorry, but.
No, you're quite all right. Don't worry about it. I guess the bottom line comes down to this. For folks who need it, the changes that I'm providing, the changes that I'm suggesting, that would still be there for them. What I'm saying is, if you're in a family where you write that check and it doesn't make an ounce of difference for how you live your life, those are the folks that we shouldn't be giving that money to. And so if they still want to have, again, folks, I'll be working with the Republican legislature. What I am here to do, if I am in this office of the state auditor or the office of governor, is leave things better than I found them. This does not make sense to be given that break to people who have so much money that they don't even notice that tuition check when they write it. All right? I think I would hope that when our surplus completely disappears, when that fuse hits the bomb in anywhere from 18 months to 2.5 years, that legislature is going to go, boy, we got to fix something, and that's a really good way to fix it. Now, that said, I'm a believer that we've got to do better in the public school system as well, right? You heard me say before, I didn't leave my independent mind behind. Let me say something else for you. There is nobody who's going to get 100% of what they want from me. There's no exception to that. And I think we've got to ask more, too, of our public school system. But have you ever noticed that you get more with honey than with vinegar? What have they been getting lately? I mean, I remember there was a guy that was running the state senate who said that teachers were sinister. My goodness. My opponent ran a TV ad saying that Marxists have hijacked the curriculum. Folks, we've had 10 years of one party control by the Republicans. Do you think they put Marxists in charge of the curriculum? I mean, this is what is so frustrating about this, is you have this lack of support. And so, of course, when changes are proposed from someone that's running you down and calling you names, you're not exactly trusting that what they're suggesting is really in your best interest. Fair? And so maybe if we had someone who's willing to say, I'm a proud product of Iowa public schools, and if we had a governor who can say, my kids go to Iowa public schools, then the folks who are there in Iowa public schools, when we have reforms that we want to propose, can come at it with a position of trust and understanding that this person is operating in good faith. Fair? Good question.
They say that Iowa is near the bottom nationally in infrastructure. How long is it going to take to turn that around?
That's a great question. I am short on proposals. I have a couple of proposals for new spending. I would like to expand early childhood education in the state of Iowa. There's a 17-to-1 return for every dollar that we put into early childhood education. I also want us to expand our water quality improvement efforts in the state of Iowa. We have a water quality crisis in the state of Iowa. We are not going to fix it with the level of attention that it has been getting so far. Transportation's a problem too. Are we 49th or 48th for the quality of our bridges, right? You're not wrong to highlight it as a problem. You're right that it is, and we do need to do something about it, but we are also staring down the safe of this deficit. Now, a lot of people like to run for office and make all kinds of promises that if you added them all up, you'd know you're not going to be able to compete, or to complete, I should say. So you're making promises that you know at the end of the day that you can't keep. We've got to keep our roads and bridges functional. That is a no-brainer. We have got to do a better job with that. But I also don't want to run around and say and promise the moon on everything, when at the end of the day, we know that we've got some reckoning coming ahead of us financially. I am ears for what we can do if there's ways to do it more efficiently and more effectively. And if you got ideas for that, I'd be ears for hearing them. But it's hard to promise new spending on it all over the place. Yes.
Question on healthcare. Is there any, what do you have that that would help us out of this Medicaid crisis?
Yeah.
I know that most of it's due to the big beautiful bill where they have about a 5-to-1 ratio of return for spending cuts. We're getting cut $5 for every $1 we're getting in return. We're getting $200 million for 5 years. We're getting $1 billion, and that's, you know, some of the campaign, like you can see Miller Meeks, you see she's touting that. And actually, Clarke County is getting some money from this, but it's coming at the cost of we're losing a couple 100,000 people off Medicaid, and
right.
That's in the long term, that's not sustainable for healthcare.
That's right. You're going to hear people who voted for the big beautiful bill say to you, we added $50 million in spending for rural health care. What you're not going to hear them say is we cut also at the same time $130 billion for rural health care. So $130 billion cut plus 50 million equals equals an $80 million or $80 billion cut. So it's a massive cut at the end of the day. That actually adds on to the crisis that we have in terms of our fiscal crisis. When that phases in, that's another $1 billion every single year that they all just voted to cut. In order to do what? Partially pay for tax cuts for the wealthiest people in this country. I don't agree with those priorities. I would rather that we have great health care and great bridges and good public schools and have all those folks, maybe the cost at the end of the day is they don't get their 16th home, right? Still got more than they know what to do with. Good for them. Here's what we can do, and here's what a governor can do in this regard. And this is something that would lower your costs, could prevent tax increases. I will reverse the privatization of Medicaid in the state of Iowa on day one. The Iowa legislature and the governor put a tax hike on the vast majority of you this year. They increased taxes on HMO, health insurance plans, which most of you are probably covered by, in order to pay for the profits of the MCOs that run privatized Medicaid. That's wrong. This program also, talk to medical providers in Clarke County, if you know any, and ask them if they've been here since before 2016 when it was privatized. Have you had to spend more time and effort and money trying to get paid for the work that you do? And their answer is going to be yes. Hospitals have had to take out a line of credit in order to stay afloat. That means they're paying interest. And when I say they are paying interest, who's paying that interest? All of us. They've had to hire full-time employees whose entire job is to argue with the MCOs about getting paid for the work they provide. And when I say they got to pay them a full-time salary, who is it that's paying that full-time salary? Us. So these MCOs have made your taxes go up to pay for their profits. They've made your costs go up to pay for their profits. And in exchange, they have made healthcare worse for the people who are on Medicaid. We audited this program. Here's how it works. If you're on Medicaid and the company says, we're not going to allow you to get this particular kind of healthcare or this particular drug or this particular thing, if you want, you can appeal that decision. And a judge will look at it and decide whether or not you're supposed to get it. We looked at the rate at which judges called denials of care illegal. And what we found was that the increase in illegal denials of care after privatization was 900%. 900%. Now, the Reynolds administration didn't like the way we ran our numbers. And I'm a fair person, so we incorporated all of their feedback, and we put into our same original document what those numbers were after we incorporated their feedback. That led to a 500% increase in illegal denials of care. The only reason that 500% isn't blowing your mind is because I said 900% first. Fair? Unbelievable that we would institute a system that is sucking money out of your pockets to send it to these Fortune 500 companies that barely have a presence in the state of Iowa in order to make healthcare worse for your neighbors. I gotta stop, otherwise I'm gonna keep going. Maddie's got the microphone. Question in the back there.
So maybe just staying on the healthcare topic. You know, we've got a lot of healthcare deserts in Iowa. We're like ranked 44th or 45th or something in terms of patient access. Physicians leave the state, and maternal health has just gotten even worse.
Yeah.
So if you could address specifically some things that you would want to do as governor in this state to change the course of healthcare access and physicians wanting to practice in the state.
You betcha. In fact, just this morning, I finally got to go to Rotary again. I'm a Rotary member in Des Moines, DM AM, and I bet I haven't been for 9 months. There's probably, in fact, I could tell you who. I bet it's Jeff. Jeff's probably in there marking down every Friday when I'm not there. But as I was walking through the parking lot, one of my fellow Rotarians was talking to me about his daughter's experience. She just graduated from the University of Iowa med school. She was there on a full scholarship, and he and she were both shocked at the number of graduates. She's doing family practice. Just the person who's there to see if front line of defense is a doctor. Shocked at the number of graduates who did not want to live in Iowa because of the political climate specifically. Shocked. We are making things harder on ourselves by having state government run by a bunch of people who don't want to listen to anyone who disagrees with them. They are not willing to acknowledge when the broken clock is right twice a day. And so they run all these bills that make it harder for doctors to practice medicine in Iowa, and they run all these bills that make people who are ever so slightly different in some way, even though they're exactly how God made them, make them feel unwelcome in the state of Iowa. This does not help us have better health care. It raises our costs by making it harder to attract people to the state of Iowa to provide health care. And if I am governor, for starters, we're going to veto every culture war bill that lands on my desk. We're just not going to do it anymore. My message to the legislature in doing that is not, do we agree or disagree with the stuff that you're doing? It's focus on the problems that impact 100% of Iowans. 100%. We have a water quality crisis. We do. We have problems with our infrastructure. We have a problem with our children being able to access mental health care facilities. We put it on our state quarter, folks. Foundation and education. And now we are ranked 26th, according to the Annie E. Casey Foundation. These are the things that impact everybody. We were 48th over the last 3 years on average for income growth. If it seems like your friends in other states are doing better than you, It's because they are. Meanwhile, the legislature is just running all these culture war bills because they feel one way. And I don't know, what do they say? To each their own? We can have rules. Nobody should get discriminated against, but we can do both without discrimination and have rules. I don't think that's complicated. Here's another piece of this. If we want to have medical professionals here in the state of Iowa, we have to make sure that their wages are competitive. If their wages are not competitive because we're not reimbursing them at a competitive rate, they're going to, more of them, live in a different state. We have seen some promising moves. They've increased the number of residency opportunities in the state of Iowa. But still, at the end of the day, this morning, I'm hearing from someone who's graduating right now, and these medical professionals about to start their careers, even those from Iowa, are so sick of the political climate here and the tiny little number of insiders who are just doing whatever they want, that they don't want to be here. That needs to stop. And if I am elected governor, it will.
Hi. So my dad is in an assisted living situation. And the people who are taking care of him do not have white skin, most of them. I'm talking about the aides, the people that are doing the hard work. And I'm worried about those folks because we don't seem to be welcoming them in Iowa either. Especially now, another thing that happened with the Supreme Court. And I'm really worried about that because the care is bare minimum to begin with. It's assisted living, and there's very little assistance, and every little thing is another point towards, skilled care or more money that he's paying out of his pocket. So I'm really worried about that part. Also, the fact that there's not very much oversight. I mean, if it wasn't for my sisters and I, my dad would have died twice because of people not paying attention to what he shouldn't have. And I'm like I said, I'm really worried about that. I look around at the folks that don't have the advocacy, and I think in Iowa we've also removed that, if I am remembering correctly, those third parties that are, that had a chance to help maybe folks find some answers, and so we don't seem to have that anymore.
Yeah. Good questions. I don't think most Iowans would disagree with the following statement. If you are following the rules and obeying the law, and you're contributing to society by doing a job and paying your taxes, and you treat people decently, then you're going to be able to have a home here in Iowa. Now, this is a conversation that was happening a lot more last year. I don't want people who are committing criminal offenses or who have committed criminal offenses to be here. I'm perfectly happy to be sending them away. And I think that if you came here that in a way that wasn't legal, that there ought to be some kind of medicine that you got to take for doing that. We can find a way to make that work. Those are federal questions, right? But at the end of the day, there's a lot of people in this state who are here who are paying their taxes, they're following the rules, they're not breaking the law, and they're doing the best to treat their neighbors well. Those, to me, are the hallmarks of an Iowan. It's not much more complicated than that. Now, one of the things that would really help there be more people in an assisted living setting would be, again, if we were offering better reimbursement rates. If you talk to them about how much they get paid per hour, I would be willing. Here's what I would be willing to bet. I bet they are getting. I'll just tell you what I know. There are places in Iowa where you get slightly more, but also slightly less than what you would get working at a fast food restaurant. Now I want you to think about that for a second. And this is something that goes deep for me because my mom was a physical therapist for physically handicapped kids. She worked for Keystone AEA. Her entire career was traveling around Northeast Iowa, helping kids who couldn't sit up learn to sit up, helping kids who couldn't crawl learn to crawl, helping kids who couldn't walk learn to walk. And she was a care worker, doing the Lord's work, putting her hands on those kids, helping them to learn to meet their potential. And I remember how much she loved that work. I can picture her coming in the door once at the house that we lived at until I was 9, just like she was levitating. My kid learned to walk today, and it didn't feel any different than it would have if it was me or my sister. In fact, I think there was probably more pride because these are kids who had been dealt a hard hand, who really had to put in a lot more effort than my sister and I did to do that. That work, whether you're doing it as a PT or like my mom did, or you're doing it at a nursing home where you are bathing people and dressing people and helping them go to the bathroom, that is hard work. And how many people want to do that when they could just be flipping burgers for about the same money? It's not as complicated. We have got to pay a competitive wage to people who are direct care workers if we want people to be taking care of folks. We also have got to have better oversight. And here's the whole idea with rules, okay? And this is true whether it's nursing homes or it's companies or whoever. I don't care who it is that's administering the fine. It could be the Department of Inspections Appeals. It could be the DNR. The fine has got to be big enough that you decide that you don't ever want to get faced with paying one, right? Where you go, we don't want to do the time, so we won't do the crime. And anything less than that, you're going to incentivize bad behavior. That bad behavior is bad for everyone too, because then the people who are working really hard to do it the right way, they don't get rewarded for it. Important issues. Another one in the back there. Oh, did you have one up here?
Thanks for coming to Osceola today.
You
Greatly
bet.
appreciate coming to Revelton.
Yeah, thanks for hosting.
Our pleasure. Probably an ambiguous question, but it's one that I think many of us have on our mind. As governor, what is it that you specifically would do to bring Democrats and Republicans together?
Good question. Let me start right here. As I said in my opening remarks, I put a Democrat, an independent, and a Republican in the senior leadership positions in the auditor's office. The independent and the Republican had made campaign donations to my opponent. I promoted them anyway. Bible tells us you will know them by their fruits. I would keep doing that. I would put people in my cabinet who are Democrats and independents and Republicans, because I'm a deep believer that I want to hear from somebody. You know what, guys? I want to do a good job. You know who's going to tell me when I'm about to do something dumb? People who think I'm wrong more often than people who think I'm right. So that helps me do a good job. And I can handle it, okay? I am married. I hear I'm wrong all the time. And I got 2 more pieces to this answer. Number 1, again, I go back to this is really a decision for Iowans at the end of the day, but you can force Democrats, Iowans, outside of me, you can force Democrats and Republicans to work together by having divided government. Linda Upmeyer and Mike Gronstall said to my class of Leadership Iowa in 2012-ish, we do our best work when we work together. And if you have to work together, if I have to, in order to sign a bill, I have to get it through a Republican legislature. If that Republican legislature has to have me sign a bill in order for it to become law, then they're going to have to work together to do it. I want to go bigger, though. Those are answers. They're honest, and I bet you agree that they make sense. I want to think bigger than that. Because again, that is operating within the same broken 2-choice system that we deal with right now, where politicians can be lazy and they can be corrupt because they place their bet on the idea that you're never going to vote for the other guy. I've had enough of that. Here's a specific plan for how to fix it. No longer would we give 2 private clubs access to our tax dollars to run an election where independent voters don't get to vote. Again, I'm American. Thank you. I want to have one primary. You can call it the people's primary. It's paid for, yes, by the people of Iowa, and so all eligible voters can participate. You want to run? Great. Submit your signatures, get yourself on the ballot. Same number of signatures, same rigmarole required no matter what party you're running under or no party at all. We all walk in and we, for each office, pick our favorite. Just vote for whoever you really want to go to the general election, your number one favorite. And then we send the top 4, let's say, to the general election. You'll notice that I didn't say the top 4, including the top Democrat, the top Republican, because who cares if it's a Democrat or Republican? We are smart enough to go ask people, what do you think about these issues? They should be leaders enough to tell us what they think. And so if in some part of the state, nobody makes it who's one who is from one of the major parties, that's fine. You take those top 4, and then I want to do what Fargo, North Dakota started. Approval voting. Here are 4 candidates, vote for as many of them as you approve of. If there's really only one that you like, vote for one. If one of them's your ex, vote for the other 3. But more likely, what you're going to do is you're going to educate yourself a little bit. It'll be a little bit closer to being in that toothpaste aisle where you got a little bit harder decision to make, and so you stand there a little bit longer and you figure it out. But then at the end of the day, you actually get to say, you know what? I'm okay with the one in my party, but I'd really like it if the independent won as well, for example. More importantly, think about this. What would happen if 3 or 4 people are running for office against each other, and all of them know that the supporters that really want their opponents to win can also support them, if they choose to? How would I treat my opponents if my opponent's supporters could also give me some support? Anybody? Tell me. We'd be helpful. Yeah. If I knew that I could get my opponent's supporters, maybe 30% of them, to also vote for me, what kinds of behavior am I going to demonstrate in order to try to get 30% of their supporters to vote for me instead of 0%? Anybody? Respect. What else? Fairness. Holy cow. I got to sit down. You mean we could make politicians be respectful and fair to each other just by changing the rules? Wow. I do think that's right. I would be kind. When I have a place where I disagree with my opponent, I would say, we disagree because we're different people who have different experiences. It wouldn't be, my opponent disagrees with me because he's out to destroy your way of life. Because if I said that, then all of my opponent's supporters would be like, wow, Sand's a jerk. He's really taken, we're giving him an inch and he's taken a mile, right? That would make everybody work together. Right now, you hear this thing, there's a thing you hear in politics a lot. It's don't bother to talk to them or don't bother to solve their problem because, and this is the thing you hear a lot, they're never going to vote for you anyway. I see a lot of heads nodding. Now, I have a golden rule, which is, what would a politician do? And then I do the opposite. And so last April, I went and I did a town hall with a conservative group in Northwest Iowa, the Gays of Patriots. I did it because a politician wouldn't do that. Just, 2 weeks ago, I sat down with the Iowa Firearms Coalition. Now I'm a gun owner. I've been a gun owner my whole life. I'm a Second Amendment supporter. But I heard from a lot of people, they're never going to vote for you anyway. I said, I don't know, I think I got some places where we agree. And I'd really love to tell them that the party that's been in control hasn't done anything on your wish list. All they're doing is picking your pocket. And so I went down and I sat down with them because a politician wouldn't do that. But if we have a system with approval voting, then all of a sudden we change what an ordinary politician would do. Fair? Because then it becomes, well, some of those people will probably approve of you if you're at least willing to be respectful to them as Iowans, if you're willing to sit down and talk with them. That would make the whole system work better. And again, we'd have these conversations not about making a place redder or bluer, but about making it better and truer. Maddie, do we have time for more questions?
We have a few minutes left. Maybe one quick question.
I know I always like to make sure that we get some folks who are in the opposite political party a chance to answer questions, and we did that. But is there anyone else that's a Republican or an independent that wants to ask a question? There's a St. Francis of Assisi quote: "Preach the gospel at all times, when necessary, use words." I can tell you, I want to bring people together, but it uses it's a lot more effective preaching if we offer the microphone. Anybody? Am I looking forward to the debates? Yes. I am. We have challenged our opponent to do 100 public town halls, just as I am doing, and do 4 debates. It's been 3 weeks or so since we said that, and we haven't heard anything back yet. So I hope we have some, but it's hard to have debates with someone that doesn't talk to you. We'll see.
I can piggyback off of that. Your opponent
Sure.
last week on his official Facebook stated that he didn't want to do a debate on your terms in the 4 largest cities in Iowa. I
Oh, yeah.
assumed he would want to do it on the tarmac in the largest airport available. I did look it up. Osceola's airport is just long enough to accommodate the Wicked Witch of the West's cruise stick. And they can't to it. Would you do a debate in Osceola or whatever rural community that he wants to do the debate? Because I want to see you.
Yeah. Debates are great everywhere. What he doesn't want, what he wanted people to miss, I think, is that we challenged him to do a public town hall in every single county. And when I say public, let me be specific about what that means, because this is what I hate about politics: is people say things and they don't really mean them. So we can define public: 2 weeks advance notice. Everybody gets to come in. You take open and unscripted questions. That's a public town hall. Now, what's funny about this is, I actually think that, and this isn't just me and my opponent, this is politics. Everybody should be accountable to every voter. I have proposed a lot of reforms. I should say this, I should have said it already, I should have said it earlier today too, when we were in Decatur County. Please go to robsand.com and you can read a lot of specific policy proposals on all kinds of stuff. We've got a lot of specifics on our website. I have a lot of specifics around accountability, because I'm a big believer that if politicians actually have to answer to people, they will do a better job of representing them. This is not complicated. We should have mandatory town halls for people in elected office. If you didn't do them, you can't be placed on the ballot again. The reason that you should have to do that is because you will make better decisions when you know that you're going to have to be face to face with the people whose lives you have impacted. I think we get people who vote for things they know they shouldn't vote for, and then they hide, don't they? And they hide because they know, oh, I'm going to hear it for this one. Yeah, you were going to hear it if you'd let us tell it to you. So maybe we ought to require that. I think he should do 100 public town halls, because he should be available to answer your questions, unscripted questions from anybody, just the way I do every year. And then it's not just that a small community gets to host a debate that's moderated by somebody between 2 candidates. It's that a small community actually gets to ask their own questions to the candidates, which is a lot more meaningful. Do we have time for one more? Is it supposed to be done at 3?
It's supposed to be done at 3.
All right. So I'll wrap us up. I hope you like what you heard. I think that we can do better in the state of Iowa, and I think we do that by returning to our culture, by returning to our heritage, by returning to divided government, where a broken clock is right twice a day, and if you want to get something done, you gotta make Democrats and Republicans work together. That is simple to me. Here's the things that you can do to help us return to Iowa. Number 1, this is no particular order. Number 1, please donate to this campaign. We use your funds to help get the message out. If you have donated before, thank you. You may now donate again. Number 2, please sign up to volunteer. You can donate at robsand.com. You can also sign up to volunteer at robsand.com. The number 1 way in Clarke County to get a person to take an action like voting or to change their mind like who they're going to vote for is the same as it is anywhere else, a face-to-face conversation with another human being. So we want you to have face-to-face conversations. We have systems in place that you can use to do that. We can have you go knock doors where we assign the doors. If you want to talk to people that you know, we have a system in place where you only have to talk to the people you know. It just depends on how much you like talking to strangers, right? But either of those things will help us win this race. So I hope you'll sign up to volunteer at robsand.com. If talking to people about politics makes your skin crawl, you can send text messages. It's okay. Number 3, social media is the scourge of our time. It is filling our head with lies. It is shortening our attention span. And it is making us hate people that we love. But while you're there, please like and share my posts. Right? I mean, I don't know what else to say. We ought to have a lot more obligations for these incredible, powerful companies that are taking all of our attention. But, you know, we're also right where we are right now. And if you're willing to comment on my posts, to like my posts, to share my posts, you will help us reach more people that you know. Because here's how social media works. If you touch a post, the algorithm shows it to more people. That's it. So, if you see a post that's lying about me, do not touch that post. You are not helping. Take that little bit of anger and go to my page and share 3 of my posts instead, just to get back at them, right? People have got a choice in this election. They do. They do. We have an opponent now. God bless him. He mostly lives in Kansas. I'm a prosecutor. Here's the evidence to support that. His plane spent 2 nights in Wichita for every 1 night that it spent in Belle Plaine. This is just since October, folks. This is right now. He voted in Kansas in 2018, 2020, and 2022. He opened a private school down there in Kansas. He thinks we should expand the school vouchers program, by the way. He also thinks that the 6-week abortion ban doesn't go far enough. He spent a decade as a full-time paid political operative. He's worked in 4 different states for special interest groups. So if he claims he's an outsider, he's right in the sense that Kansas is outside of Iowa. But he's offering more of the same. He's not going to change direction. He's not going to force Democrats and Republicans to work together. He's going to take where we are and just speed it up. I want something different. I want us to look at our neighbors and love our neighbors. I want us to admit when that broken clock is right twice a day, and maybe even admit it out loud if we can. I'll close with a story. I haven't told this one for a while. One of the people that I talked to and got to know a little bit when they were running the bill to gut the auditor's office, and this kind of goes back to Democrats and Republicans working together. That's why I'm going to tell this story. I called her up. She's a state representative in her first term. I told her about the bill. I had called her when she had won, too, because I always call people in the legislature after they win the first time. Before they come to Des Moines in January, I just say, hey, congratulations. What made you decide to run? What do you like to do for fun? Okay, well, I'm Rob Sand, and, you know, now you got my number. I think we're supposed to be working together. Call me if I can do anything. So we had already had one conversation. When I called her, I told her about the bill. She asked me some good questions. She said, well, I think I'm going to vote against it. I said, thank you. Then she called me back, probably weeks later, said, hey, I just want you to know, other people have been telling me other things about this bill, and I've been listening to them and asking them questions too, and I'm really struggling with what the right thing to do is. And I'm telling you this because we're going to vote on it tomorrow, and I don't know how I'm going to vote. I'm praying on this a lot. I'm not sure what the right thing to do is. And if I end up voting for the bill, I want you to know it's not because I lied to you. It's because I've really been putting time into this and I'm struggling. Anybody else impressed? I was impressed. Said, thank you. What are you hearing from other people? You don't need to tell me who you heard it from. I don't care. Just what are the ideas that they're telling you? And I'll tell you what I think about them. So we continued our conversation. And she ended up voting against the bill to gut the powers of the auditor's office, one of 6 Republicans that voted against it. Wasn't enough of them to stop it. This is a person who was at the United States Capitol on January 6, 2020 to stop the steal. If you don't think that we can work together because we disagree on major issues, then you are exactly where the 2 private clubs want you to be. There are people of good faith who want to live good lives, who want to do the right thing, who might have very different ideas about what is happening very far away from Iowa. But if we take those people and we trust them and we force them to work together in Des Moines, we can find people who have integrity, who are honest, and who maybe disagree, but they understand that their purpose on this planet is to leave it better than they found it, and that they will work with anyone to do good and work with no one to do bad. That is an Iowa that isn't just redder or bluer, but that's better and truer. Thank you all for being here today. Appreciate the support.